Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a topic that's been a big discussion in the WSL Culture Council, and it's all about turning conflict into collaboration. Now, if you're on the front lines of healthcare, especially in those high-stakes moments like an obstetrical emergency or a really complex GYN cancer surgery, you know this isn't just some soft skill. Nope. This is a critical tool that can actually impact patient outcomes. We're going to explore how to get past confrontation to find solutions where everybody, and most importantly the patient, comes out ahead. You know, a lot of us are taught to see any kind of negotiation as this zero-sum game, right? A tug of war. For me to win, you have to lose. But in a clinical setting, that mindset isn't just unhelpful, it can be downright dangerous. Just think about it. When surgeons, nurses, and anesthesiologists are locked in this battle of wills over a plan of care, it can cause communication to just break down, delay treatment, and that ultimately puts our patients at risk. And this quote from the founders of the Harvard Negotiation Project, it really nails it. If we're so focused on winning an argument with a colleague over a treatment plan, we've already lost sight of the real goal. The second it becomes about our egos, the patient's well-being is no longer the top priority. So the big question is, how do we break free from this win-lose way of thinking? Well, in this explainer, we're going to walk through a really powerful framework. We'll start by digging into the common negotiation trap that we all fall into. Then we'll look at a completely new way of thinking about our goals. And finally, we'll get you set up with some practical strategies to get better outcomes for your team and, of course, for your patients.
We have all been there. It feels like you're in the trenches. Both sides dig in, and it just becomes this battle of wills. I mean, you can feel the tension when you're arguing over limited OR time for an urgent case, or trying to figure out who gets the most experienced nursing staff or really complex pelvic surgery. This adversarial approach, it doesn't just create a toxic environment, it chews away at the trust and collaboration that are absolutely essential for a medical team to function at a high level.
And this whole dynamic usually leaves us stuck between a rock and a hard place. So what do? Do you go in hard, demanding what you think is right, but maybe burning bridges with your colleagues? Or do you go soft, avoid the conflict to keep the peace, but maybe you end up compromising on what's truly best for the patient? The truth is, neither of those is the right answer. Okay, so the key to escaping this trap actually lies in a super simple story that just brilliantly shows the fundamental flaw in how we usually handle these things. So picture this. Two sisters are arguing over the very last orange. Their positions are crystal clear, and they're in total conflict. I want the orange. So the obvious solution is just to compromise, right? Cut it in half, 50-50, feels fair. But here's the thing. By just splitting it, they both only got half of what they really wanted. And that's because they never bothered to figure out why the other person wanted the orange to begin with. And this story, it perfectly illustrates the critical difference between a position and an interest. A position is the what. It's the thing you're demanding. An interest is the why. It's the underlying reason you want it. So for example, a surgeon's position might be, I need the OR right now. But their interest, their why, is that their patient has a condition that's getting worse by the minute and needs immediate surgery. As soon as we understand the why, a whole new world of solutions can open up. The landmark book, Getting to Yes, gives us a really solid 4-step framework to get us beyond these rigid positions and start finding solutions that actually take care of everyone's underlying interests. All right, so this framework gives us 4 key principles that can literally transform a negotiation from a face-to-face battle into a side-by-side problem-solving session. First, separate the people from the problem. That means we attack the issue, not each other. Second, focus on interests, not positions. That's what we just saw with the orange story, right? Dig for the why. Third, invent options for mutual gain. This encourages us to brainstorm creative solutions together. And finally, insist on using objective criteria. This means we rely on evidence and standards, not just our own opinions. So the key here is to be hard on the problem, but soft on the person. We need to really try to understand our colleague's perspective, even if we don't agree with it. And this is where using objective criteria is so important. Instead of a battle of wills, we ground the entire discussion in things we can all agree on, like established clinical guidelines, hospital policies, or patient safety protocols. Suddenly, it's not my way versus your way anymore. It's about what the evidence and our shared standards say we should do. This image is just a perfect illustration of that third principle. Invent options for mutual gain.
Instead of getting all tangled up fighting over one fixed resource, we need to work together to find a more creative path forward. In the OR, maybe that means resequencing the day's cases, or collaborating with another team to share some equipment, or maybe even exploring a different but just as effective surgical approach. The whole goal is to make the pie bigger before we start slicing it up.
Okay, but this all sounds great in theory. Let's be real for a second. What happens when the other side seems to have all the power, or they just plain refuse to collaborate? What do you do when you can't get the resources you need for your patient? This is where your real power comes from, and it's not about being more aggressive or demanding. It's about having a strong BATNA. That stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. Basically, it's your plan B.
Think about it like this. Imagine walking into a job interview with no other offers. Now picture walking in with 2 other great offers in your back pocket. See the difference? That's the power of a strong alternative. In a clinical setting, this means you've thought through your plan B. If your preferred surgical tool isn't available, what's your next best option? If the OR schedule is totally packed, is there another viable plan for your patient? Knowing your BATNA gives you the confidence to negotiate for what you really need, and the freedom to pivot if you have to.
So here's the key takeaway on this point. Never ever walk into an important negotiation without already having a well-developed BATNA. You have to ask yourself, what am I going to do to ensure my patient's safety if we can't come to an agreement here? Having a clear answer to that question isn't just a backup plan, it's your greatest source of strength. So having a strong BATNA protects you from a bad deal. But what if you could change the game entirely? What if a problem that looks absolutely impossible isn't? This brings us to one last story that perfectly wraps up this whole shift in mindset, from trying to win a fight to trying to solve a puzzle together. Okay, so a father passes away and leaves 17 camels to his 3 sons. His will is very specific. The oldest son gets half, the middle son gets a third, and the youngest son gets 1 night. The brothers start arguing almost immediately because the math is impossible. You can't divide 17 by 2 or 3 or 9 without, well, based on their positions, there is no fair solution. They are completely stuck. But then a wise woman comes along and offers to lend them her camel, just for a moment. Suddenly, they have 18 camels. So the eldest takes his half, that's 9. The middle son takes his third, that's 6. And the youngest son takes his 9th, which is 2. Now add it up, 9 plus 6 plus 2 equals 17. There's 1 camel left over, which they gratefully return to the woman.
That story, it's the perfect metaphor for a true win-win negotiation. The wise woman didn't just split the difference. She introduced a creative, temporary resource, the 18th camel, and that made it possible for everyone's interest to be completely satisfied. The lesson for us is crystal clear. Stop fighting over the 17 camels and start looking for the 18th.
In our world of complex surgeries and high-stakes emergencies, that 18th camel is all around us. It might be a new clinical protocol, or an innovative way to schedule cases, or maybe even a piece of equipment that we're not using to its full potential. By shifting our focus from our rigid positions to everyone's underlying interests, and by always looking for that creative 18th camel, we can turn any conflict into a chance for collaboration, better teamwork, and ultimately safer, more effective patient care. So the question I want to leave you with is this: where is the 18th camel hiding in your next conflict?